Sorry. Hi.
Hi.
So what are you reading today?
Raggedy Ann.
Okay, start.
One day Marcella came into the nursery. "You're invited to a tea party," she told the dolls. "We can sit outside and watch the men painting the house." Marcella brought all the dolls outside. They sat in red chairs at her table under the old apple tree. They drank lemonade with grape jelly in it, which made it a beautiful lavender color. They ate cream puffs and tiny little cookies with powdered sugar. The sun was shining and a soft breeze was blowing. While Marcella and the dolls were having their tea party, men were painting the house. One of the painters saw Raggedy Ann. "Look at the rag doll," he said. "She's a daisy." Raggedy Ann didn't notice the painters because she was watching some boys who were flying a kite. One boy lifted the kite above his head while another held a ball of string. Suddenly, a breeze took the kite from the first boy. The kite climbed high in the air. Then it fell down. "It needs a longer tail," one boy shouted. "Let's tie Raggedy Ann to the tail," Marcella suggested. "I know she would enjoy a trip away up in the sky." The boys were delighted with this new idea, so Raggedy Ann was tied to the tail of the kite. Raggedy Ann was happy too. She thought she might like to be up high. This time the kite was thrown straight in the air, and Raggedy Ann was way, way up and far away. How Raggedy Ann enjoyed being up there. She could see for miles. The house and children were tiny, and her shoe button eyes couldn't even spot the other dolls. Just then there was a great puff of wind, and Raggedy Ann heard the ripping sound. It was the rag that tied her to the kite. Down below, Marcella was getting restless. "Will you please pull the kite down now?" she asked the boys. "I want Raggedy Ann." The boys didn't want Raggedy Ann to come down, but the wind puffed again and the rag tore.
This book. Can you have it?
Raggedy Ann went sailing through the air as the wind caught in her skirt. The kite began darting and swooping to the ground. The boys it landed in the apple tree, and this the boys, Marcella and all the other dolls, watched. Raggedy Ann flew out of the sky and fell into the can of paint. Marcella ran to her doll. Oily white house paint covered Raggedy Ann's yarn hair and her shoe button eyes. It covered her pretty blue dress and her striped stockings. It soaked into her cotton stuffing. The nice painter who liked Raggedy Ann fished her out of the paint can. "My goodness," he said. He looked at Marcella. "If you'll let me, I'll take her home with me. I'll clean her up tonight and bring her back." Marcella nodded. She was too upset to speak. The painter grabbed Raggedy Ann and newspaper. Then he brought her home and washed her in the tub. He put her feet in the clothes wringer and his wife turned the crank. It was hard work, but Raggedy Ann came through the clothes wringer. She was flat as a pancake, and so was her smile. The painter hung Raggedy Ann on the clothesline, and he and his wife sat down to supper. Raggedy Ann swung upside down on the clothesline. Even after the sun went down, it was still warm outside. She wasn't lonely because the moon and the stars kept her company. Just before dawn, a robin and his wife flew by. They asked Raggedy Ann if they could have some of her yarn hair to line a nest for their little babies. Raggedy Ann smiled at them. They took yarn from her head and some of her cotton stuffing. When the sun was all the way up and Raggedy Ann was quite dry and toasty warm, the painter unclipped her from the clothesline and brought her back inside. He sewed new yarn on her hair. Then he took out the rest of her old stuffing and filled her full of fluffy new white cotton. "Don't sew her up yet," said his wife. She pulled a paper bag from a cupboard, reached inside, and fished out a red candy heart. It had blue letters printed on it, said "I love you."
Oh.
The painter took the heart from his wife. He poked it inside Raggedy Ann, just where her heart would be, and sewed her up like new. Then he said goodbye to his wife and went back to finish painting Marcella's family's house. Marcella and the dolls had passed a sad night. They missed their friend, and they wondered if they would see her again. When the painter arrived, they were waiting under the apple tree. "Here she is," said the painter, "fresh as daisy." Marcella hugged Raggedy Ann. She smelled so good. That night, all dolls arranged themselves around Raggedy Ann in the nursery, and she told them about being washed and put through the clothes wringer. She told them about Mama and Papa Robin and about being dried and stuffed and made just like new. Last of all, she told about the candy heart that read "I love you."
Oh, the end. Now, let's go.
Raggedy Ann and Rags.
Okay, like this. See? The same. Of course.
One clear summer night, Raggedy Andy, and Uncle Clem were sitting in front of the playhouse. Marcella had played outside with them that afternoon and had been called into the house. Now the sun had gone down and the evening shadows had turned everything a lovely purple. The little fireflies came up out of the grass and sailed high into the air. "Who knows?" Raggedy Ann said in a whisper, caught in soft voice. "Perhaps we may see the fairies." "Oh, I wish we could," said the Uncle Clem. "Shh," said Raggedy Ann very quietly. "What is that?" They heard something like a twig snapping near the orchard fence. The dolls waited. The moon had risen, and now a tiny puppy came into the sight. The puppy's fur was white with brown spots and had soft black eyes. He trotted up to the dolls and sniffed each of them in turn. "You are very small to be on your own at night," Raggedy Ann told the dog. "Where is your mama?" The tiny puppy dog said nothing. He licked Raggedy Ann's face with his pink tongue, clambered to her lap, and turned around and fell asleep. Raggedy Ann and other dolls sat quietly watching the night and the fireflies and the puppy dog.
Oh, like mine.
Bright and early the next morning, Marcella ran out to the playhouse. When she saw the dolls, she ran back to the house. "Daddy, Mama, come quick," she cried. Mama and Daddy followed Marcella to where the dolls sat. Raggedy Ann held a tiny puppy dog in her lap, partly covered by her apron. "Maybe the fairies brought him," Marcella said. "I wonder where his mother is," said her daddy. "Oh, we can't leave him out here." Marcella picked up the puppy dog and brought him into the kitchen. Her daddy followed with the dolls. Mama found a saucer of warm milk for the puppy, and he lapped up hungrily. "What are you going to call him?" Daddy asked. Raggedy Ann found him. Marcella said, "I shall call him Rags." All that summer, Rags drank warm milk, and he grew bigger and stronger. He learned to bark through he could never tell the dolls where he came from or who his mom was. Marcella liked to dress Rags in the doll's cap and night tie. She fed him up treats and sometimes played rug of war with an old stocking. Rags chewed Papa's socks until Mama found out and said, "Bad dog!" so sternly that Rags went to hide in the closet. But he couldn't be downhearted, especially after one of Marcella's tea parties, when he could lick the crumbs from the dolls' faces every night at bedtime. Daddy would let Rags outside and he would run around the house and bark, then he would fall asleep in the garden, keeping one eye half open for the rabbits. Most nights, Marcella put the dolls to sleep in the nursery, but if she was called to an early supper, the dolls would stay outside. One evening in August, some of them were left on the beach. As soon as he was let outside, Rex ran around the house. He barked at the playhouse and at the stone wall by the beach. Then he joined the dolls near the water, where he barked and barked at the moon, wagging his stumpy tail. "Mercy," said Raggedy Ann. "What are you barking at?" Rag said nothing, but trotted up to Raggedy Ann and licked her hand. She had to laugh, for I knew he just wanted to pretend he was taking good care of them all. "Raggedy Ann, will you come sailing with me?" asked Squeaky. She was a new doll in the nursery, stuffed with wood and sawdust. She had found a flat board just the size for the two dolls, with a string tied to the front. Raggedy Ann thought a sail was a fine idea, so she and Squeaky pushed the wood into the water and climbed on top. Gentle waves lapped at the board, and the sudden breeze pushed them away from the shore, where Raggedy Ann, Uncle Chen, and Cleety the clown were looking for hermit crabs, and Rags were barking at the minnows in the shallow pools. Raggedy Ann and Squeaky sat arms around each other, looking at the silvery trail of the moon on the water. It was so peaceful. They didn't realize how far they had drifted, and none of their friends on shore noticed their absence. Not even Rags noticed, and he made it his business to notice everything. "Goodness, what a noise!" Raggedy Ann exclaimed. Rags was barking furiously, running up and down at the edge of the water. "Look!" Cleety said, pointing. "Raggedy Ann and Squeaky have gone sailing." "They're awfully far out," said Uncle Clem. "Perhaps they need to be rescued." "But how?" asked Raggedy Andy. "We can't swim, for our stuffing will be waterlogged if we try. No, Rags," he added, for Rags had flung himself into the water as if he prepared to swim all the way to the two sailors. "I know," Cleety said suddenly. "The steamboat, it runs very fast in the water." Marcella had a little steamboat that she often brought down to the water, which ran by a little key that turned a paddle wheel. It lay not far away on the beach. They all ran over to the steamboat and carried it to the water. But when they tried to climb on the board, the little boat turned over and sank. "This will never do," said Uncle Clem. "All of us except Cleety are too large to ride on this steamboat. Cleety will have to be an engineer and captain and everything." So Cleety the clown climbed into the little steamboat, and Raggedy Andy and Uncle Clem waded out into the water and gave it a grand push. Rags barked and dashed into the water and back again, but Raggedy Ann told hold of his collarbone he could plunge into deep water and swim alongside the boat. Cleety wound the key in the smokestack, and then he waved to his friends and guided the steamboat across the water. Raggedy Ann and Uncle Clem and Rags walked back to the stone wall, sat and down. The two dolls and Puppy watches Clyde and Steamboat sped away across the silvery wake of the moon. Rags looked up at Raggedy Ann from time to time, as if this to say, "I can't swim out and help Cleety," but he kept still and didn't bark. Cleety wound and wound the key, and the steamboat sailed through the water. A wild duck swooped down and was so startled by the sight of Clown on the little boat that it flew away, and not even answering Cleety's question, "Have you seen two nice dolls drifting on a board?" So Cleety sailed on and on. Cleety circled around the bunches of swamp grass toward Peach Island. He just about giving up of finding the dolls when he heard Squeaky's voice from across the water say, "What is that thing sailing out there, Raggedy Ann? It looks like a tiny ship." The Raggedy Ann said, "It's a tiny ship, Squeaky, and look, Cleety the clown is making it to go." So Cleety ran the little steamboat up to where Raggedy Ann sat upon the wooden board, holding Squeaky on her lap. "My goodness," said Raggedy Ann. "How glad we are to see you, Cleety. We had a most delightful sail, but it would never do for us to drift out to sea." "That's why I'm here," Cleety said. Raggedy Ann and Uncle Clem and Rags would have come, but the little steamboat wouldn't hold him. "Then we shall have to hug them when we are back on shore," said Squeaky, "and I intend to hug you too." Cleety thought it would be very nice and said so. Then he tied the board to the little steamboat, turned the key, and headed for shore. The journey back was a slow one, for Raggedy Ann and Squeaky and the board were very heavy cargo, and Cleety had to rewind the key many times. As they neared the beach, they heard loud barking. Rags had spotted them, and he was running excitedly up and down at the edge of the water. "Look!" said Raggedy Ann. He also had spotted the little steamboat and the two dolls on the board. He and Uncle Jen joined Rags by the water. Rags couldn't wait another second. He jumped into the water and swam out to meet the sailors, almost upsetting the little steamboat with the waves he made. "Now, Rags, please be careful," Raggedy Ann said. "We are glad to see you, but you must not sink us." So Rags swam behind the little steamboat and carefully placed his black nose against the board. He pushed the board and the steamboat toward the beach until Raggedy Ann and Uncle Clem could pull them the rest of the way. Once on shore, Raggedy Ann and Squeaky gave Cleety big hugs for rescuing them, and then they hugged Raggedy Ann and Uncle Clem for good measure. Rags ran around them in circles. He was so happy to see everyone back safe and sound. Then he shook himself all over. "Stop, Rags," said Raggedy Ann, but she wasn't really angry. She sat, and Rags flopped down beside her. The other dolls sat in the sand nearby, and that was how Marcella found them in the morning. "Oh, poor babies, you're all damp," Marcella said. She gathered the dolls in her arms. "I must take you inside and feed you breakfast, or you will surely catch a chill." Raggedy Ann looked at Raggedy Andy, and their shoe button eyes twinkled. As for Rags, he rounded the house 3 times and then went to sleep in the garden, with one half open for the rabbits.
Raggedy Ann and Andy and the what?
Camel with the wrinkled knees. One day, Raggedy Ann and Andy were walking in the deep, deep woods when they met their friend, the camel with the wrinkled knees. The camel's legs were so wrinkled and soft that he seemed almost to fall every time he took a step. "Whoop!" Raggedy Ann said as he helped the camel sit down. "You almost fell over that time." "Indeed I did," said the camel. "My legs aren't what they used to be." Raggedy Ann tried to smooth out the wrinkles in the camel's knees, but he smiled and said, "That would do a bit of good. When I was brand new, I had sticks inside each leg to keep them straight. After a few weeks, the sticks poked through the legs, so the mother of the little boy who played with me pulled them out. Now my knees are saggy and soft, but I'm much more comfortable when I lay down." Raggedy Ann felt her candy heart go thump, thump, for she was glad to hear the camel's story. "Maybe you can help out us," she said. "Last night we heard footsteps in the nursery. Now our friend Babette, the French doll, is gone. We don't know where she is." The camel scratched his head with his floppiest leg. "Maybe I can help you," he said. "I think I can find Babette," said the camel. "If I cover my eyes with the hanky, and if I run backward to the place where I came from, you had better climb up and ride." So Raggedy Ann and Andy climbed up into his soft flannel back. The camel started walking slowly, then faster until his wobbly, wrinkled legs were hitting the ground clumpity, 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 and he was running surprisingly fast. After they had run along for 10 minutes, they heard a clip clop, and Raggedy Andy turned to see a funny old horse running toward them. The camel stopped suddenly, and the horse ran straight into him. Raggedy Ann and Andy fell over the camel's nose. The poor camel's head was pushed flat into the ground, and his wrinkled neck was wrinkled up against his body. The horse sat down on his back legs and sighed. "I'm so tired," he said. "I am old, and the least exercise wears me out." Raggedy Ann and Andy were busy pulling the camel's head back into shape and removing the hanky from his eyes so he could see. "We were running to find our friend Babette," said Raggedy Ann. "We think she was kidnapped." "I am running away from pirates," said the tired old horse. "Maybe they have your friend." He pointed to a large tent not far away. Very quietly, the dolls, the horse, and the camel crept up into the tent. They peeked into the small hole. Inside were 12 large pirates with mustaches, and in the corner, all alone, stood Babette. "Listen," Raggedy Ann whispered. "Ha!" said one pirate. "I am the bravest pirate around here. We're all bravest," said all of the other pirates. "They'll all be fighting in a few minutes," said Raggedy Andy. Then Raggedy Andy picked up a small stone, no bigger than a pea. He threw it softly into the tent so it bounced off one pirate's shoe. "Ow!" the pirate howled. "Who hit me?" Raggedy Andy threw another tiny pebble, and suddenly the pirates decided that it would be safer outside the tent. There was a jam at the doorway, and the pirates all fell in the tangle of arms, legs, and heads, pulling the tent down with them. Raggedy Ann quickly reached under the fallen tent and found Babette. She was unhurt and very happy to see her friends. The tired old horse turned to the pirates who had just stopped fighting. "Now you must promise to reform and not be pirates and kidnappers anymore, and then I'll give you each a lollipop." He knew that pirates had nothing to eat all day, but bread and butter and pickles he held 12 lollipops high so the pirates could not reach them. I'll stop being a pirate and be a plumber, cried one pirate. I'll stop and go to the garage business, another pirate shouted. When all the pirates had said, cross my heart, the tired old horse gave them each a lollipop. Then the three dolls, the camel, the horse, and the pirates all climbed into the pirates' flying boat, and it jumped into the sky and sped away. Soon the boat came to rest in the doll's backyard. Raggedy Ann, Raggedy Andy, and Babette said goodbye to their friends and crept into the playroom. While all the other dolls were sound asleep, they climbed into their beds, bounced up and down once, and smiled. Then they fell asleep too.